Hello, hello! Welcome back to Brenda's Books. Thank you so much for coming back to listen to more of Sara's War. If you would like to follow Brenda's Books online, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Today we are on Chapter 55. Here we go. Chapter 55. Giving It Your All. Hey, who are you? Who is this girl? By the sound of his voice, I can tell this is Lester. His dirty blonde hair and long nose inch close to my face. I shove him back, suddenly deciding that my new character will be someone as immature as he is. Hey, don't touch me! Who are you? He repeats. I've never seen you before. A wiry seaman, with eyebrows as thick and dark as his jet black hair, shoves Lester out of the way. He rips my hat off and looks at me long and hard. Excuse me, the hat is mine, I gripe, ripping it out of his hands and putting it back on my head. I look better in it than you do. From the corner of my eye, I see Nate's lips curl up before he bows his head. I think he might be pleased with my performance. All right, sweetie, tell me who you are and why you're here. Now that he's spoken, I know this guy is Bryce. Well, I'm definitely not your sweetie, I declare. The crowd snickers. Then the helmsman, who didn't even look like he was paying attention, stands up from his place at the wheel and points a long finger at me. She's a spy. Throw her in the ocean. If you do that, Brontes will slit all your throats. How do you know that name? The helmsman says. He inches toward me and pulls out a pocket knife. You have 5 seconds to let me know if I can trust you before I slit your throat. Yeah, Tennyson, Lester calls. I raise my hands in annoyed surrender. Seriously? It really had to come to this? A rose doesn't prick, it poisons. The man Tennyson stops and puts his pocket knife away. Why didn't you just say that in the first place? Hello, I say in the most annoying tone I can muster. Because there's an army guy sitting right there. I gesture toward Nate on the floor. Tennyson dismisses Nate with a wave of his hand. We'll be rid of him soon enough. My heart pounds in my chest and fear courses through my body. Nate winks at me and I have no idea what that means. Tennyson, shouldn't we get going? Says a short female shipmate next to him. Yep, let's do it. Brontes wants the seals to eat dirt soon, I say. Tennyson snaps his head up at me. What? Who told you that? I open my arms. I thought we were trusting each other. Tennyson stands again. He shakes his head and marches over to me. Brontes doesn't talk to anyone. I know that, I say in a high tone, desperately hoping my nervousness isn't slipping through. It was Ame I talked to. Tennyson jolts his head back. How do you know that name? Because I talked to him, I say with precision. Hopefully this is more convincing since it's actually true. Why would Ame want to talk to you? Tennyson demands. I click my tongue the way Ame does. Surely you can't expect me to share all my secrets, Tennyson, I say, in my best impersonation of Ame's accent. Bryce laughs. Dude, this girl is totally legit. Ame always says that, and there's no way she could match his accent like that if she hadn't actually talked to him. Tennyson throws his hat down on the consoles. Fine, you've convinced me, but if you're somehow bluffing, I will take care of you myself. My insides squirm and squeal, but I shrug and smile. You got it. Bryce puts his elbow on my shoulder. Tennyson, don't worry about this one. I'll take good care of her. He smiles down at me with a nasty grin. It really does make me want to throw up. I don't think so, Eyebrows. You just called me sweetie. I shift so his elbow falls. Bryce's smile just widens. What's in the backpack? Asks Lester. Wouldn't you like to know? I snap. Let me see what's in the backpack, Tennyson says, who is busy with his controllers again. I sigh and hand it over. It's just medical supplies. Check it out, Tennyson says to the woman next to him. His sidekick opens my backpack and checks all the pockets. Yep, it's definitely all medical supplies. Bryce lifts a hand. Wait a minute. Did Ame give that to you? Because he's not usually the thoughtful type, if you know what I mean. I shrug. He likes me. "Wow, can you believe this chick?" he says, pointing a finger and exchanging glances with the other seamen. It takes all my willpower not to roll my eyes at that comment. Instead, I grin and put my hands on my hips as I turn around and glance over the group. For the first time, I catch Jack's eyes. His passive mask is as thick as ever. Now that we're in the light, I can see just how beat up his face is. Then I notice him holding his side. Blood drips through his fingers. I have to turn around to hide my shock. When was he shot? It must have been before they brought him to the hatch. That was almost 30 minutes ago. I turn around and pretend to eye him with nonchalance. "Speaking of medical supplies, don't you think we better patch up that guy? He's not going to be any good to Brontes if he bleeds out before we get there." "What, are you a doctor now too?" Bryce asks, giving me his disgusting smile again. I gesture toward Jack. "Any idiot can see that." I meet Jack's eyes again. His face is so pale and sweat trickles from his brow. It's truly amazing that he's still standing. Nobody seems to care one way or another. They all busy themselves with either navigating the submarine, or bantering back and forth, or dispersing to other locations. So I make my way over to him and take out a couple of huge patches. Bryce follows me. "If you really are going to do that," he says, "why don't you take him in here?" He leads me into a room stocked to the brim with storage, but it does have one lonely cot. Jack follows without a word. "Why don't you untie him?" I say to Bryce. "And risk him—" He pauses. I raise one eyebrow. "And risk him what?" Bryce chuckles. "You're right. He can't really get away. But why are you doing this?" "I already told you. Brontes wants him alive. Any idiot can see he won't make it that long." Jack sits on the cot, and Bryce unties him while I get to work. "Why are you bothering cleaning it?" Bryce asks. I shift to look at him. "Would you like to do this, smarty pants?" Bryce raises his hands in surrender. "All right, honey, but let's take the room for ourselves when you're done." I give him my best glare. "What, I can't call you honey either? What is your name?" "My name is In Your Dreams," I snap. Bryce smirks. "Playing hard to get, are we? Fine. For now." Then he swiftly leaves the room. I release a huge breath, so grateful to be able to be myself again. "Why don't you lie down?" Jack obeys, clenching his teeth as he grasps his side. He's a most unpleasant sight of dirt and sweat and blood. I've never been so happy to see him in my life. "The bullet missed any vital organs," I comment. Jack nods. "I figured." "I'm so sorry I didn't notice it sooner." "You were busy, trying to prove you were an immature traitor with a gigantic attitude." I half grimace, half smile. "Well, I definitely got the bleeding to stop, and I have a dose of morphine," I tell him, as I inject the very liquid under his elbow. I can't believe he's not writhing at this point. "You're very prepared," Jack says. I try. Jack doesn't take his eyes off me as I start wiping blood off his forehead. "People are going to think you care about me if you clean me up too much." I stop and let out a huge sigh as I toss my wipes into a nearby trash can. "You're mad at me for doing this, aren't you?" Jack shakes his head against the flat pillow. "Not at all. I can't tell you how good it is to see you again." He swallows and lifts his bloodshot eyes to the ceiling. "You are braver than I ever imagined, and you've always been brave." "How did you get out of the hatch?" I ask. Jack looks at me and smiles. "I knew Brontes wanted to see me himself. I just had to give those guys a little bait. Besides, I know stuff about them that really makes them squirm." "I half expected you to bolt before you got on the sub, but all things considered," I glanced down at his bullet wound. "I can see why you didn't." Jack swallows. "Sara, remember what I told you last night?" I nod. "Yes?" "The reason I was in such a hurry to tell you all that was because I knew there was a really good chance I wouldn't make it through today." I shake my head. "Jack, don't say that," I whisper. "We're going to make it. You are going to make it. Lexy will come get us off the island, and as soon as we get to the hospital, I'll give you a transfusion, and you're going to make it." A soft sob creeps out my throat, and before I know it, uncontrollable tears drip down my face. Jack takes my hand and squeezes it. Sara, I appreciate this more than you know, but we both know I might not make it, and I really want you to be able to. So let me tell you where the escape room is. I shake my head and wipe the tears off my cheeks. I already know where it is, and you are going to make it, I whisper fiercely. I'm definitely not speaking like a doctor would. A doctor would say that in his condition, she would do everything she could for him, but she would never guarantee he would live, knowing how much blood he's already lost, and knowing that she can't get him more blood anytime soon. But I don't feel like a doctor now. I feel like someone who's losing her love again. Despite all my efforts to avoid it, I'm losing my love again. Tears stream down my face once more, and as if Jack knew what I was thinking, he whispers, I love you, Sara. My tears spill like a rushing waterfall now. I place the back of my hand to my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. I jump in place when Bryce pokes his head in the room again. Hey, you almost done in here? I turn my back on him so he can't see my face. I'm just cleaning up my tools. Were you some kind of corpseman before? Yeah, I say. Why do you think Ame trusted me with the medical stuff? I guess that makes sense. But come on, we got a half hour to kill before we finally let the game out. I grit my teeth, anger racing my heart. How could he talk about Jack like he's some kind of moose kill? The thought makes me want to strangle him. You know, Bryce continues, I heard most chicks think this guy is some sort of hunk. But considering he's almost dead, I'm definitely a much better option, don't you think? You're really subtle, aren't you? I yell over my shoulder. Bryce lets out a high cackle. That's why chicks dig me. I'll wear you down. I'm good at that. I clench my teeth and hold my breath until Bryce leaves the room again. Sara, Jack says, I've been called a lot worse than what he called me. I take a deep breath. It still infuriates me. Jack reaches for my hand again, and I turn to face him. Don't be upset for my sake. Now you better go before you blow your cover. I nod. I trace my hand down his maimed face. I lean over and kiss him on the lips. I love you too, Jack. He lets out a deep sigh and leans his head into my hand. We hold each other's gaze for a long moment. Then I grab my backpack and slip out the door. The next 30 minutes are absolute torture for me. I have to listen to the most heinous jokes of the universe. Some crude, some downright hateful, and some just plain stupid. Tennyson finally announces that we're at the island and ready to surface. Now who wants to take care of this one? He asks, pointing to Nate. Oh, I do, I say. He got away from me earlier today, and it really irked me. Be my guest, Tennyson says. Bryce, I need my KAC too. Bryce smiles his nasty grin. Did I tell you how much I like this chick? He tosses me my rifle, and I lead Nate up the steel ladder. He does a perfect job of acting terrified. Once we reach land, I untie Nate's swollen wrists. I point my rifle up to the sky and pull the trigger. Nate nods. Is that you taking care of me? Yes. What happened to your M16? I ask. They confiscated all my weapons, Sara. Of course they did, I mutter. You better go hide. I need to go back in the sub and make sure they get Jack out. Then I'll find the escape door. The sub is submerging, Nate says. What? I glance at the submarine, which is indeed sinking without me. Just then I hear voices on the shore. I put my goggles back over my eyes. Jack is about 40 yards away. There's no way that's happening, Brontis, his deep voice says. He's facing the ocean with his hands tied behind his back again. I said turn around, Colonel, Brontis yells at him. He has a gun lifted up in Jack's direction a few feet away from him. And I said no, Jack yells. Oh no, I whisper. I lift my KAC-2 and aim it at Brontis, whose gun is pointed at Jack. Choosing not to second-guess myself, I pull the trigger. The weight of the shot yanks into my shoulder. I hit Brontis's arm and it jerks back. Then another shot fires and Jack falls to the ground. No! I shout. Brontes starts dragging Jack to the water with one arm. "No!" I shout again. This time I run while trying to shoot. After 2 complete misses, Nate grabs my gun, stops in place, and fires. Brontes falls in the water. We both sprint to Jack, and for the first time in my life, I outrun Nate. The 2 of us grab him under his arms and drag him to the shore. "Help me untie him," I pant. Nate unties Jack with a few grunts and yanks, then lies him on his back. "Jack!" I lean my cheek close to his mouth. Nothing. No pulse either. I blow air in his mouth, then I yank open my backpack, grab some adrenaline, and stab it into his thigh. Within seconds, he sits up, heaving and gasping for air. "Jack!" I cry. "Just breathe, okay? Breathe." Jack responds with heavy gasps and wheezing. I kneel up and push down on his fresh wound by his shoulder, which is gushing with blood. My heart leaps with shock as another gunshot fires and Nate collapses in the sand. I whirl around and see Bryce pointing a gun right at me. His thick eyebrows scrunched together with an oily grin. Another gunshot fires, and Bryce collapses into the water. I gasp and spin around again to see Jack holding my anaconda in his hand. I quickly scan the area to make sure I see no more enemies, then crawl through the sand to check on Nate. I scream at the sight of him, then fall on my elbows. I pound a fist into the sand. "No!" I shout. My whole body convulses with loud screams, then sobs. And that concludes Chapter 55. Whew, that is a hard one to get through. When I first wrote it, I couldn't stop crying. And now every time I read it, I have a hard time not crying. I hope you join me next Thursday for Chapter 56. If you want to find out more about Brenda's books, you can visit brendasbooks.net. Until next time, take care.